So we are going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, I wanted to ask if you already bullet journal. Bujo, of course, is the abbreviation for bullet journaling. That is the term you will often see online. So if you want to go ahead and let me know in the chat what your experience with bullet journaling is, if there were any questions when you signed up for this and you were like, I really wonder what this is about. I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to address them in the course of this program today. So don't be shy. Let me know. Awesome. Somebody started last month. I've been kind of bullet journaling on and off for a couple years. And yeah, if you haven't done it before, that is fine because we will start from the very beginning. All right. Ooh, hand lettering. That is something I do not do, and I'm super jealous of all the people who do it. All right, so for those of you who are newer to bullet journaling, I did want to start us off with a little thought from Ryder Carroll, who's kind of the inventor of the so-called capital letter bullet journal method. And for him, the bullet journal method's mission is to help us become mindful about how we spend our two most valuable resources in life, our time and our energy. So the thing I personally really love about bullet journaling is that it's a really cool mix of like minimalism and mindfulness, but it's also journaling and planning. And I'm someone who, if I don't write it down in a planner, I'm gonna forget about it. So I'm sure probably a few of you can relate to that. Yeah, especially for homework. If the homework's not written down, it didn't happen. So hopefully this will help you along your journey. Okay, now why would you bullet journal as opposed to something else? Bullet journals are going to be using a form of rapid logging, which was developed by Ryder Carroll as a customizable kind of planner slash journal slash diary. It's kind of mashing everything together and it's very customizable. So he describes it as KonMari for your thoughts, which I find extremely entertaining and I love KonMari. So that it's just an extra plus for me. I don't know if it's for any of you as well. And one thing that I always find really interesting is Ryder Carroll himself has ADHD. So he designed it for himself to be especially helpful for managing executive dysfunction symptoms. So those are like if you have issues with planning, time management, working memory. So all of those things it can kind of help you out with because you are tracking things the way that your brain works. And there's a lot of modifications to the system you can do to make it work better for you. So give me just a sec here as we transition over to YouTube for a quick video. It's just under 5 minutes and it's really the very basics on how to do bullet journaling. And then we're gonna loop back through and cover the same content in a little more depth. So I should have my computer audio on and we have subtitles on as well.
We keep track of things. The things we've done, the things we need to do, the things we aspire to. There's a lot to keep track of. There are plenty of apps for that, but I needed a system flexible enough to handle whatever I threw at it and fast enough that it wouldn't get in the way. Hi, I'm Ryder and this is a brief updated overview of the bullet journal. It's an analog system I designed to track the past, organize the present, and plan for the future. Does that sound good? Okay, let me show you how to set it up. Though this overview features a custom notebook designed for bullet journaling, the system works just as well in the notebook of your choice. To get started, flip to your first blank spread. This will be your index. To set it up, simply title both pages as Index. Now, let's set up your future log. To set it up, turn to the next blank spread. Title both pages as future log. There are many ways to set this up. Here's a simple 6-month version. Count the amount of lines on your page. Now divide that number by 3. With a ruler, draw a line across the spread. Add the months to each box. When you're done, add your page numbers and add the future log back into your index. Okay, turn to your next blank spread. This will be your monthly log. Add the name of the month on both pages. The left will be your monthly calendar. Write down all the dates of the month, then add the first letter of the days. Okay, that's the calendar. The right page is your monthly task list. Write down all the things you need to get done this month. Before each task, draw a task bullet, which is just a simple dot. Add the page numbers and then add this month back into your index. The monthly log provides you with a bird's eye view of everything you need to get done in a month and the time you have to do it in. Okay, let's set up your daily log. Start by entering the day's date. Now you can start adding entries. Entries are logged using short bulleted sentences. Each entry goes into one of 3 categories: tasks, indicated by a dot bullet; events, indicated by a circle bullet; and notes, indicated by the dash bullet. If a task is really important, place a little star to the left of it. This is known as a signifier. Signifiers add extra meaning to bullets, in this case, priority. This is known as rapid logging. It makes capturing and organizing information really fast. Now we've set up all the core modules for the bullet journal: the index, the future log, the monthly log, and the daily log. Now I'll show you how they all work together. At the end of each month, set up your next monthly log. Scan your daily logs for open tasks. X out the ones that you've completed. Now take a moment and assess the remaining open tasks. Ask yourself, is this still worth my time? If it's not, strike it out. If it is worth your time in the short term, turn that entry's task dot into a right arrow and copy the entry into the new monthly log. If a task is due months from now, turn the task dot into a left arrow, then copy that entry into the corresponding month in the future log. This process is known as migration. Migration will help you weed out distractions. It's designed to help you focus on the things that are worth your time. It's the difference between being busy and being productive. Sometimes you'll have related tasks and notes. To help organize related items, let's create a collection. First, go to your next blank page and give it a topic and number the pages. Now migrate all the notes and/or tasks into that collection. Now index that collection for reference later. Collections are a great way to organize shopping lists or ongoing projects or classes. Okay, that's it for the basic overview. For more tips and tricks, please visit bulletjournal.com. Please like and subscribe to this.
Okay, now we're gonna pop back into the main thing. And all right, so hopefully that was straightforward for those of you who are brand new to the method. Did anybody have any immediate questions as a result of that? I'm not seeing anything pop up in the chat, so we'll keep moving. Okay, so the index. So this is a little more fleshed out of an index. You can kind of see what he was talking about. So the index is really just kind of to track everything that's inside your journal so you don't lose track of what's happened, or like if you have one topic and then you go back to it time and time again. So I'll be honest, when I bullet journal, I do not use an index. But for me, my pages, I have a pretty good idea of where I put things. So for some people, the index is essential. And then for other people, the index is something that like they can take or leave. So that really differs depending on the person in my experience. Yeah, so is it super necessary? You know, some folks love them and it's absolutely essential. If your brain doesn't work on an indexing kind of level, then I'd say you can kind of take or leave it. But it is helpful in terms of, it's kind of nice to see if you return to a topic again and again. So I'd say that's probably where the most value lies in it. Otherwise, I mean, depending on how big your journal is, there's only so many pages to flip through. So it depends on the style of bullet journal you're using on whether that's going to be super helpful for you. Okay, so here's an example of what why writer Carroll calls his method rapid logging. So traditional, you've got like your checkbox, you've got like longhand, full sentences explaining things. He advocates for like using as few words as possible to get your point across. And again, some of us actually use full sentences, or this is a part that's really adaptable, but I would say that the bullet journal list, in terms of like having the bulleted list and the subtasks and having like a certain symbol for events, or just notes, that is the general key, is really helpful in my experience. So here was the key that he described, and some people add to this or change it up completely depending on what they prefer to look at. So the basics is that you've got your basic bullet as a task, your little dash is a note, and then you keep track of events with the circle. And then again, the migration versus being scheduled in the future log, that is also something that's key to the original bullet journaling method, but I would say people kind of change on whether they use that one or not. And for me, I grew up on part of the internet culture where strike-throughs are ironic. So I don't use strike-throughs to designate irrelevant tasks. It's more like a note that you want to be sure is written down, but then you're just crossing it out because it's fun. So I don't know if anyone else uses strike-throughs that way, but that's how I grew up using them. And then we have our logs and spreads. So this is an example of the future log, which how Writer has done his is it's literally just a little snapshot in time. What you'll find in practice is a lot of people include calendars when they're doing the future log, so that they have some kind of visual representation of the full month alongside the tasks that they are pushing off to the future. And then this would be your monthly log to the left and a daily log on the right. So the monthly log usually has a monthly task list as well. In this case, the dailies. So Writer's method relies on the dailies never being written out ahead of time. So you would do it like the night before the day or the day of is when you would write out your daily, because you never know how much space an individual day is going to take. It could be half a page, it could be 2 pages, depending on how busy your day is. So that is an approach, again, that works better for some people than others. And it may be a little tricky to work with as students. So we are going to show examples later of what people would call weekly spreads, which kind of takes the monthly log in that it's laid out and it applies them to a full week. As opposed to being super heavily reliant on the particular daily spread. But you can really do it either way. Again, it's all down to how your brain works and what makes the most sense to you. And then, so migration, it actually is on purpose that it's a lot of effort that you have to rewrite everything. It's supposed to make you pause and consider each item. Now, I will say with all of this, it is a little different when you're a student, because even if you don't finish your homework, you know, your teacher probably still wants it. So that's not something you can necessarily get around. But in terms of like other tasks that you may have taken on, or like hobbies or that kind of thing, that's kind of what that's for, is to figure out what's worth the effort and then like what's just making you feel busy or overwhelmed versus something you need to do. And then you can also use that migration process for your whole journal, because obviously journals are finite pieces of paper generally. And you will eventually need to move to a whole new journal, whether that's at the new year or whether it's midway through the year. So migrating a whole journal is also kind of a process with this method. And then collections. So collections are really, really versatile. Here they've given an example of like a basic food log, so tracking what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. They also have a shopping list, which is literally just a shopping list. So nothing too fancy, but you will find, and again, we'll go into many visual explanations for you here, that collections can be used for pretty much anything you're interested in. For example, I'm going to be moving very soon. So I have a collection in my bullet journal where I'm tracking like all the little things I need to do to move and like what I need to change my dress with and all of that kind of thing. So I'm sure each of you probably have something that is a topic that you want to go into a little depth on, or you want to track projects that you're interested in doing. That's really what a collection is for. Okay, so here I want to invite you to practice or share a bullet journaling spread. So if there's like a particular bullet journal that you really admire and you want to go look for a spread to share, you could do that here in the chat. Or if you just want to practice, you can practice any of the ones we've looked at so far, or I recommend, you know, just trying a basic monthly log in Writer Carol's style where you just have your days of the month and the days of the week next to them and kind of write out maybe what you've been up to this month and maybe what you still need to do on the task page. And this is also a space for if you have any questions so far. So I will say, let's give ourselves about 5-6 minutes, or if you all are ready to move on in 4, you know, we'll think about it. Okay, I've seen a little action in the chat, but I would say to summarize, we can go into more depth on some of the other things, but to summarize, you can use any notebook for bullet journaling. Some of them will work better for some variations of the method, but a spiral bound notebook, honestly, if you just want to try it out and you don't want to spend a lot of money on a hobby you're not sure is for you, just use a spiral bound notebook. Pencil's fine. Longevity could be a little bit of an issue in terms of pencil can lift over time. So if you're hoping to refer back to your journal in 10 years time, I would say some of my journals from my adolescence got a little smeary. So yeah, so if you're interested in longevity, for sure, some kind of pen, but even like a basic ballpoint pen will get you started. And then a lot of people will draw things out with pencil first and then go over them with pen after, especially if they're doing like a really fancy spread. So that's always an option as well. And actually, we talk a teensy tiny bit, but a lot of people will use stamps and stencils and all kinds of fun toys. So like any other hobby, it's one that you can spend a lot of time and energy on. If that is your fancy, or if you want to keep it basic, you totally can. All right, are we ready to move on to the extremely fun part, which is the visual tour? Okay, I think I saw at least one yes, so, you know, we're gonna do it. So here on our Whirlwind Inspiration Tour, I just wanna stress that once again, I can send this PowerPoint to you later, and if you see a layout that you like, maybe just do a quick sketch of it, and we can always go back to things later, but we won't be able to spend a ton of time on each and every slide as we frolic through. All right, first we're going to start with some examples of indexes and future logs. So unless otherwise specified, all of these images actually come from thebulletjournal.com, which is writer Carol's site. He does a lot of blog articles and shows off a lot of other creators, some of whom are much more visual than he is. He practices what we would consider a very minimalistic style, but there are some pretty ones in here. So this index is just a little more filled out. I did want to call attention to it because they have kind of pulled out the month. So as they go through, they can see at a glance which things have happened in which month and where they've kind of shoved everything. So this is someone who does use their index regularly, and you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. And here is another style of index. This one's a smidge more visual. What they did was they actually wrote out each and every page number. I think they had a pre-printed journal, so they kind of did their page numbers, or you can page number by hand. I've done that too. So if you really want to know what's on each and every page, this is a style you could employ as well. And then here is more of a future log. So you can see on the left, they have their key. So they've added a question mark for requires research. They added an exclamation point for ideas or inspiration. And then on the right, you have a really pulled out future log where it's literally just a calendar. So this would be pre-printed in your average journal, but because it's a customized bullet journal, they chose to do a little bit more customization. Now these are kind of fun. This is actually a birthday calendar, but you could use it to track anything else that happens during the year, of which there are several. So like an event calendar or any other kind of thing. It's just a nice circular tracker that's more of a visual spread than something rectangular and boring. It's very eye-catching. Okay, and then that person who did the index with the heading that you guys liked also did a future log. So here you can see that they have like the little calendar, and then they also went ahead and wrote out all the days of the month and labeled them and did some event tracking. Now there's not a ton of space for what's happening on any particular day. So that's where you'll see different people use the future log for different things. If you just want like a really wide view of like, these are some important events that are going to happen this month, this kind of layout's fine. If you want to pack a little more detail into your future log, you'd probably want to look for something else, or maybe only have 1 or 2 months on a page. And this is kind of a cool future log I like, because they put the calendar really tiny, and then they have lots of space underneath to kind of draw out different events. You can see that they've highlighted certain days, and it's just kind of a cool floral layout. Now we're gonna shift into monthly trackers. So here's a real basic one. It's just tracking events and tasks, and then you've got your days of the week down the side. So you could also break this out into any other kind of thing that would require 2 things at a time, perhaps homework and your life outside of school, or any other designations that you want to do. Maybe you're really active in a hobby or a club or something, and you want to track that separately. So there's a way to do it. This one is a timeline. So this is kind of a fun look. Again, it's not very useful for the folks who want to shove a bunch of information into 1 month, but if you're just looking for more of a cool overview, this is a really artistic way to do it. You don't even have to draw. You could like just copy and paste some photos in there, or print things off that look cool. It's very versatile. And then here's another illustrated one. As you can see, the turtles are kind of getting up in the month. So that Thursday, like nothing's ever happening on a Thursday because you kind of can't use it. But it does look very cool. And for someone who kind of wants maybe more of an aesthetic spread for their month and then going into the nitty gritties, like on the weeks or the days, this could be a good one for you. And then here's a monthly spread. So you have art on your left facing page, and then on your right facing page, you have your full month layout. And they've kind of pushed it out into 2 columns. So they have their personal events to the left, and then they have more like work events or school kind of stuff to the right. So that way they can get a little more information in. And here's another one. And I like this one because it's got like the 4 little breakouts. So you can really get granular. You can have goals for the month. You can track tasks. You could track homework or other things. And they also have a section for next month. So you can get a little view at a glance of what you might need to prepare for in the next month. And they've put their weekends in a different color. So you can see at a glance what's going on there. So this is kind of, it's a cool visual layout, but it's not super intense. So this would be really easy to replicate for you. Now we're moving into weeklies. So here Art strikes again. So this is a very minimalistic layout in terms of what they're actually tracking for their week. You can see to the bottom right, they are giving you more of a task list. So of course they can only track so many tasks in that space, but I feel like they're making pretty good use of their space. And then they also have some art touches as well. And I believe at the top that could be hand lettered or that could be a stamp. Just depends on what they're doing. And this is really cool, not just because of the art, which is stunning, but I don't know if you guys are familiar. This is what we would call a Dutch door layout. So what happens, that little piece in the middle was actually a full page that they cut down to that little bit so that they could flip it back and forth. So that gives them a little more space on each side for each of the days of the week. But then it's also just a cool accent that they can show as they go through. So some journals are going to be able to do that better than others. Of course, like a spiral notebook is not going to be very well suited for it. You'd want something with sewn binding. And even on sewn binding ones, like some of them are going to be a little sturdier than others. So you are introducing a little more fragility into your journal by doing the Dutch door layouts. But there are a ton of them out there if you search for them, like on Instagram. And then here's another really basic layout. I like this one because it's kind of simple, no frills. You've got lots of space to track things. They've included a personal quote. And I do like at the bottom right page where it says like week 7, you could track your weeks of the semester, which is maybe going to be more important when y'all get to college because usually your assignments are by week of the semester. But you might see that in high school a little bit too, depending on your course. And then here are some more visual weeklies. So here you can actually see they have actually used stickers to kind of enhance their journal. And this is a little bit more of a free form to the top left. They've got some grids happening to kind of anchor things. But then on the other layouts, they just kind of had a pleasing arrangement and they threw in some collage. Which is always fun, especially if you collect a lot of stickers. I am definitely a sticker person. And then here's another more simple one. I do like this one as well because it includes a little calendar up at the top right. So they've included a quote, and on their calendar, they've highlighted what week it is of the month. So that kind of just gives you a little more visual glance of where you are and what's going on. And it gives you an extra section as well. And here, let's see. And then here we're back to another more visual layout. So this is, again, just another simple collage here. It looks like they've incorporated some journaling as well. So you could really do these however you like. If it makes you happy to have an extremely artistic layout, you should go for it. And then here is another more minimalistic one. So they've given lots of white space at the top, and then you can go throughout your week and just track different things. And I see we are fandoming in the chat, which is fun. But yes, if you search pretty much any fandom and bullet journal layouts, you're gonna find some. I saw a really cool Sailor Moon one just this afternoon as I was researching for this program. So there's all kinds of fun fandom love out there. A lot of people will even do book-related spreads, which we will talk more about as we go through. And so again, here are some more visual weekly layouts. Here they've incorporated different colors and just some cute accents. I always like the ones that are kind of seasonal. So you get like your florals in spring and your beachy vibes in summer. All right, we are moving into the daily trackers. Okay, so here's a really simple one. This is based on what Ryder Carroll is doing. So actually to your right is more of a collection. They're planning out their KonMari tidying festival. But to your left, they have their daily log. So they're just kind of keeping track of some habits or tasks that they need to do and making notes of some other things. You can see here, they're not spending a ton of lines on any particular day because maybe their life is just really laid back at this particular point in time. But they may have other days where it takes up the whole day. One page is the whole day. And then here's more of an artistic daily. So these would be if you have a little bit of time to dedicate every day. So they kind of have their different facing pages. You can see that built into their daily layout. They're tracking their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they're also tracking some other habits. It looks like maybe medication, if they're drinking water, and they're tracking their classes up on top. So you can actually shove a lot into a daily if you want to make sure that there is a single page every day. So this is another way to do dailies if you prefer something a little more artistic. All right, now we're moving into habit trackers. So this one is pretty nifty. You just need a ruler, and then what you would do is you would color in a square every day that you complete the habit. So they've listed the days of the month along the outside, and they've listed their different habits in the one section. So they want to do a quiet hour, they want to read, they want to go to bed by 11, they want to make sure that they journal every day. So habit trackers are incredibly personal. So of course, everyone's habits are going to be a little bit different. You don't even have to track your habits, but a lot of people do because there's things that they want to accomplish or be building into their daily routines. And then here's another example of a habit tracker. So in this case, when they say smoke and alcohol, what they probably mean is they didn't smoke and they didn't drink, but they've done it as more of a win-lose. So every day that they succeeded at what they were supposed to do, they mark it as a win. Every day that they did not do what they were supposed to do, they mark it as a lose. So for someone who's a little more competitive in nature, you may find this kind of habit tracker really useful for you, because not only can you see if you are keeping the chain up, but you know, maybe you just don't want to lose. So that's one way to do it. This is another habit log. So this was actually done by a high school student. So in their case, they wanted to track doing certain kinds of reading or treats or making their bed and not complaining, I assume, to their parents. So those are the habits that they chose to track. And I think they were just going to either mark off or highlight each of the days they accomplished that task. And then here's another habit tracker. So those little calendars often are stamps or stencils. And then they have just chosen 6 or 7 things to track. They actually have a mood tracker built in, which functions really similar to a habit tracker. Usually they just have some kind of visual key on this was a good day, this was a bad day. And one reason to track that is some kinds of medications alter mood, and you want to keep an eye on that. Or if you have any other kind of health concern that you're tracking. For example, I get migraines, so sometimes tracking like what you eat or how you feel is a really good way to keep ahead of those kinds of concerns. And they've also got a reading tracker built in, which we will do more of those. Okay, we're going to quickly go over finance trackers, whether or not you get an allowance. or make money on your own, finances will be something that's good to track as you get a little older. So here's kind of a fun one. I like that it has a piggy bank on it, and they have their savings goals that they're tracking. And they also are keeping track of what they're actually spending every month, which is kind of nice to get into the habit of young. And then in this case, this is a saving up for log. So you can see that every time they put away however much money they've designated, in this case $20 or $25, they're coloring in the box as well as marking it in pen, so that way they can kind of see a larger goal that they're saving up for. Another way to do that kind of spread is, in this case, they're saving up for a house, but if, say, you're saving up for a car or even something like a really cool journal, you can kind of draw a picture of what you're saving and then make little bricks or other things to save up for altogether. And then here's just your standard expense tracking log. So what they've done is they have a positive and negative column. So positive is the money comes in, negative is the money goes out, and then they're tracking what is actually in their account as well. So that's really handy to get into the habit of, just to know how much you have at any one time. And then this is another variation on one of those expense logs where they've added the date and the place and what kind of a transaction it is. So for example, if you want to find out if you're spending a lot of money in vending machines, you know, this could be a good style to track it. Okay, now we're moving into some other kinds of collections. This is a review tracker. So in the original bullet journaling method, they do recommend including reviews, monthly reviews. So you kind of track the positive and the negative of your month. And in this case, they've also chosen to include a playlist and a watch list. So things that they have really enjoyed that month. There's some other watch lists we'll look at here in just a second. So they're also tracking numbers. It looks like in their case, they have some social media followers. They're trying to track how many hours of sleep they got altogether. So if you're the kind of person that's really motivated by having like cool numbers to share, this could be a really useful spread for you. Here's another variation on a monthly review. This one is breaking it down into what worked, what didn't work, and what you want to improve next month. So the really nice thing about a bullet journal is because it's so customizable, you can change it up month by month super easily. And you can even put in your bullet journal how you're going to change your bullet journal. In this case, they've also decided to implement a new evening routine. So they really have just broken it down for themselves and tracked what they're gonna do, which I think is kind of a cool thing to see. And then this is a year tracker. So it's a year-long mood tracker. So you can see the month is what's across the top. So they are tracking morning and evening emotions. And then they have the days of the week across the bottom. So here you can see they have a very complicated color scheme in terms of like excited, good, normal. And then at the end of the year, they're gonna have like a really cool visual representation of how their year went. And then this is what we'd call a pen test or a scratch pad. So I saw that some of you were interested in pens earlier. So one thing that a lot of folks will do, and even if you search for it, you can find a lot of other people's, is if you want to know how a particular pen does in a particular journal or a particular kind of paper, people will do these kinds of pen tests where they just write out the pen that they're using, and then they flip to the other side usually to see if it's ghosted, which means does it appear through the other side. Now, a little ghosting can be acceptable. Everybody's thresholds are very different. But you know, if you plan to do a lot of ink art, let's say, and you know that your pen is going to bleed through to the other side, it's just going to make it really difficult to write on that other page. So that's why people do this kind of thing. So yes, bleeding is the technical term. Yeah, so the ink will actually seep through because, you know, paper is fiber. It's like, if you draw on clothing, sometimes if you flip it over to the other side, you'll see it peeking through. It's the same general concept as you get with paper. So sometimes people are really concerned about what the page is going to look on the other side because they want to be able to use both sides of the page to do what they're doing. If there are particular other kinds of art materials you want to use. So for example, some people really want to do watercolor in their bullet journal, which is totally cool, but it requires a really special kind of paper. So you're going to have to do a little more research ahead of time to make sure that your journal is going to work for what you want it to. And I don't know what those numbers are at the top and side. I think they're just, oh, it's the boxes. That's what it is. They've counted out how many boxes are on each side of the page. So that's going to help them with creating layouts later, is why they've done that. And then here's just a gratitude page. So they've chosen to do a daily affirmations page. Maybe this is a page they're going to come back to over time and read it out every morning. This is actually a step counter. So over the course of the month, they're going to have a little point for each number of steps they've done the whole day. And then at the end of the month, they're going to have a really cool visual representation of the steps they took the whole month. This is a notice board, which I thought was kind of clever. So when you aren't sure where to put all the miscellaneous things, you create a spread to contain them. You could also create a spread like this to just house some sticky notes. And then once you've used those sticky notes, you can put them on other places in your journal. And then here's a goals page. This is a yearly goals page. So this would have happened at the beginning of the year. So they have written out a few things that they're interested in doing and then added some artistic flair. Here's a different representation of a goals page. So here they've identified 3 major goals, and then they've kind of broken them down into specific tasks that they can be tracking over time. And here we go, the series to watch and movies to watch. So these are just your basic checklists. In this case, they're coloring them in as they watch them. So, you know, there's so much streaming media out there these days and a lot of media available at your local library for free with your library card. So you can be tracking what you want to do and marking it off when you accomplish it. In some spreads, people will also like add the dates that they finish things. So you can kind of look back and see. Here's another really cute spread for a movie night. It's popcorn, and they are coloring it in and adding titles once they've actually watched the individual thing. And here's the summer bucket list. So they've written out some tasks and kind of drawn pictures to go along with them of things that they want to accomplish over the summer. And we have some different seasonal examples. But this one is to show you, like, you don't have to be the best artist in the world to get across your point. It can be fun just to kind of draw little things out. Here's a little more intense version of a spring bucket list. So they've added color in this case. And have just little things that they want to do to celebrate the season. And then here's a fall version if you want to get ideas. They're going to watch Hocus Pocus and go on a hayride. And I imagine they'll be coloring these in as they accomplish them. And now we have some spreads for school. So here's an example of a weekly tracker that is incorporating specifically homework and projects as well as tasks. So in this case, they've blacked things out when they're done, and then they've like half blacked them out when it's in progress. So that's one way you can do things. And then they've put the primary focus on the days of the week, and their weekends are smaller because there are less school things to do. Here's another one. So this is going to be your semester at a glance type calendar. So if you want to track the courses you're in and when they're meeting, they have used a colored code spread to do that. And I don't know if any of you are ready for AP exam type things, but in case you are, here's an example of how you can track that. So they are monthly calendars devoted to their different assignments and classes, but you can see that they've really pulled out when they're going to be studying for specific tests. And they've colored things as well, and they've included their study resources. So this is one way you can be tracking those kinds of super complicated assignments. And then here's a fun little college visit spread. So here they're ranking the universities they've visited and kind of working down their list. You could also just do that for standard research too. Here's a very simplistic spread on this is a particular school that they're interested in going to. And here's some information in terms of what are the majors they want to do and what are the costs. And then a job application tracker. I don't know if any of you are in the spot where you need to be applying for jobs, but here's a good example of just kind of keeping things in one place so you can track what's going on over time. Okay, now we're into the really fun stuff, which is reading spreads. So this is a really cute reading tracker. They've done a bookshelf style to the left. So here they're in a book club. They're reading nonfiction and fiction. So they've colored in titles and books as they go. Here we've tracking library loans. So did they read it? Did they need to renew it or put it on hold again? Did they finish it? And when is it due back? So I highly recommend this one to all of you. All right, and then here, this is from rivetedlit.com. To the left, they've got a chapter tracker, which I thought was pretty nifty. You color in as you finish chapters. We have another bookshelf tracker. So they have tracking books that they own as well as books that they need to read. And then they have a quote spread. So anytime you run into cool quotes that you want to save for later. And this is from Modern Mrs. Darcy, who does a lot of reading challenges and things. So she has two challenges in this case. She's doing a reading for fun and a reading for growth. So you can see that she has different categories that she's trying to track, and she's written out the books that she's using for those categories. Now you may be familiar, we have a big reading challenge. It's meant more for the over 18s, but you can certainly participate for fun. It's called Read ICT, and we have a bunch of different categories that you read in, and you try and find books that match the categories. And then Book Riot has also come through. They have several articles on bullet journaling for readers, but these were the two that I liked the best. So they've actually drawn out the covers of the books that they've read. And then there's another version of a chapter tracker where you just have the title and author, and then as you go throughout the book, they're coloring in the pages, which I think is kind of cool. And here's another really basic reading tracker. In this case, they're also rating. So whether you put these ratings on Goodreads later or you're just doing them for your own reference on if you want to reread something, here you can see they've actually added some extra notes as well to certain titles. And then this is another really cool visual spread. They've actually, I think, printed out and pasted the covers of the books that they've read. So they've also incorporated rating, and they've incorporated some kind of like small summary as well so that they can look back on it. And this particular journalist has also done like a specific book tracker spread, which I think is cool. So in this case, they read Clap When You Land, published in 2020. So this is actually pretty new, and this is a really recommended one. So if you want to get a hold of it, I'd recommend it. So they've gone through, they've pulled out some quotes that they like. They've started writing up a review. In this case, I think this person is a professional reviewer. Yes. Okay, we have some recommendations for the book. Okay, so I was going to have you practice another spread, but we don't really have time for that. So let me just launch into these last things. We do have a little bit of shopping advice. Basically, just keep in mind journal size. A5 is going to be the most common size you're going to see, and that's about 5 by 8 by 8 by 3 in terms of inches. So that's a really good size to stash in a pile of other things to carry around. A6 is a little smaller. So if you prefer to carry around smaller things and you have an iPhone for scale, A4 is going to be closer to 8.5 by 11, but it's actually a little bit of a non-standard size for us. It's standard overseas. So A4s are going to be if you want like a really big journal to spread out in. And then B5 is huge. And some other things to keep in mind, do you want a hardcover or softcover journal? So different brands do different things. Your interior pages, a bullet journal is traditionally has dots inside of it, but you can use a line journal or a grid journal or a completely blank journal. A completely blank journal, you might just have to do a little more measuring with a ruler if you are really concerned about having things be super straight in your journal. GSM is grams per square meter, which is also known as paperweight. So I've given some examples here on what are the different kinds of paperweights you can look out for. I myself use the Leuchtturm, which has 80 GSM, which I like fine for ballpoint pens. If you're using something a little more intense, you may want to look for a little bit of a heavier paperweight. So the thicker the paperweight, the less ghosting for highlighters, fountain pens, markers, but sometimes they're more expensive or they have less pages per journal. So 160 GSM is functionally the highest, but it's essentially watercolor paper, like it's really heavy like cardstock. So if you want to just be writing on cardstock all the time, that works. Otherwise, you can use something less. Stencils are really popular. I linked to that website because they actually have a review of a bunch of different stencils that they've used. You'll find a lot of stationery people are very thorough in documenting things. So if there's something you're interested in buying, I'd do a quick Google search and add the word review, and you might be able to find some tips and tricks on making it work for you. Washi tape is going to be a Japanese masking tape that's super durable and flexible and available in a bunch of really pretty patterns. It's easy to tear by hand, but scissors are going to make for a cleaner cut, and it's actually formulated to be repositionable. So there are different kinds of washi tape. There's like the real washi tape, and then there's like washi tape that's not really washi tape, but it's still masking tape, and it's still got cool patterns on it. So some of them are going to be more opaque, and some of them are a little more see-through. So that's kind of how you tell the difference in quality. And I was going to talk more about goal setting, but I think we're running out of time. So I'm just going to scoot us through. This is in the official bullet journal method book. So if you want to learn more about goal setting, I would really recommend it. And now we're ready for our Q&A. So what questions do we still have? Feel free to type them in the chat. And I think Erin has been keeping track of some things for us. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know that we did answer the pens question fully. I'll be honest, I'm not the best person to ask about this because I just use ballpoint pens. I use the Atlantic G2s, I think. So I just really like how they slide. If you want really fancy pens, we actually are super lucky to have a really cool stationery shop in town. It's in the Revolutia development off Central. So it's the one with all the shipping containers. And we actually do have a stationery store inside of there. So they have all kinds of really cool tools. You can also find a lot of bullet journaling supplies at Target or Michael's or Hobby Lobby or any of those kinds of crafty stores. So if you want specific advice on those kinds of things, I would seek out experts, or like I said, stationery nerds write really long reviews. So you can definitely search for some things and get some ideas. Now, some of the books that will be recommended at the end of this presentation will go into more detail about specific pens or fountain pens or that kind of thing. So I would really recommend you look at those resources too. And let's see. And do we need colors? Not necessarily. It just depends on if you prefer a more colorful journal. For highlighters, I use midliners. So those are the ones that are mild liners. So they're kind of less neon highlighters, because standard highlighters actually kind of hurt my eyeballs. I don't know if anybody else feels like that. So the mild liners are a little low-key one. Yeah, they come in really cool pastel colors, and they're just a little bit easier on the eyeballs. And yeah, how much money are stencils? It really varies. So you'll find some stationery shops selling them, or Etsy will usually have 1.5 million things. I would say depending on where you're buying, shipping may actually be the more expensive part, because if it's coming from overseas, if it's like Korean or Japanese stationery, that might end up being more expensive depending on where you're buying it from. And yes, thank you, Erin. Snark and String Studio. And the owner of that has actually done some of our bullet journal programming for adults that we have held. And we are just about, I'll pop through a few more slides here. Yeah. AliExpress is a little bit more like buying from eBay. So some recommended reading. These are the suggestions that we sent out on that mailer that you all got with the link to today's program. The bullet journal method by Rhoda Carroll is kind of the standard. Dot journaling is gonna be pretty similar, but go into a little more depth. I think they have more layout ideas in that one. And then the other two are, again, gonna have more layout ideas as well. And here are more art journaling. So if you prefer like the super artsy kind of journals, these are gonna be a little more inspiration for that style of journaling. I've also added some recommended reading based on planning and organization. So if you are here because you like the idea of organizing all the things, we have some books for you too. And for more layout inspiration, some of those three Instagrams linked are going to be a little more minimal bullet journaling, but they do have some cool lettering. And there's loads more Instagrams out there that you can check out. I've also included some subreddits, basic bullet journals. So those are going to be individuals who are posting layouts and giving and getting advice about doing bullet journaling in a more minimal style if you prefer that aesthetic. And then the regular bullet journal community is going to include more artsy layouts, more color. You'll find a lot of advice for supplies there. So you can definitely ask about pens there or search for pens. And again, my name is Sarah Moselle. That is my email right there, smoselle@wichita.gov. So like I said, I can send out a presentation or a copy of tonight's presentation to everyone who registered's email. But if you think you might have a different email address than what you registered with, or if you used a parent or guardian's email address to register and you want to get it on your personal email, go ahead and send me an email at that address and I will just send it out to that one. We do have a really cool new service called Personalized Reading Lists that I wanted to recommend, the wichitalibrary.org/reading racks. You send me a list of some of your favorite and least favorite authors and genres and a number of books you want, and I will send you back a reading list of items available at the library. So if you haven't used it, go ahead and check it out. We've had a lot of fun with that one. And was there anything else that we needed to answer? We are 5 minutes over at the moment, but let me know if there's something else you need from me before we call it a night.